I chose Robert LaFollette as a topic because having grown up in Wisconsin, I was aware of who he was, but not really clear on exactly what his policies were, or for that matter, what the progressive policies were. So it offered me an opportunity to learn more about LaFollette and what he stood for. I'm going to do this presentation in three parts. The first part is going to be basically about LaFollette's early life that shaped who he became. And then I'm going to shift to talk about progressive policies in general, along with introducing others in the progressive line who were supporters of these causes. And lastly, I'm going to relate these policies, progressive policies, to LaFollette's political life. On this slide, on the left, you can see a cabin that LaFollette grew up in. He grew up just a few miles southwest of Madison, Wisconsin. Um, he put together at 3 years old a nice little poem that says, "You'd not expect one of my age to speak in public on the stage," kind of a precursor to who he would become. LaFollette never knew his biological father, but his stepfather provided lots of wisdom for LaFollette. I found this quote: "He will either turn out to be a very wonderful man or a very bad one." Quite telling, perhaps, suggesting LaFollette may have had a charisma that could be used for good or evil. Just speculation on my part there. There's a story that Robert LaFollette's grandfather, Jesse LaFollette, was a playmate of Abraham Lincoln when they both lived in Kentucky. The second part of this slide gives us some insight into LaFollette's values. He did not discriminate when it came to punishment as a district attorney. He believed in hard work and did not take a stand on prohibition, as this divisive topic might detract from what he felt were more important issues. LaFollette, as his stepfather suggested, did attend the University of Wisconsin Law School. He was an actor in college and liked to take part in plays where it was good against evil. As a student, LaFollette did not apply himself well, and it took an intervention from the university president for him to graduate. In 1882, LaFollette married Belle Case, the first female graduate from the University of Wisconsin Law School. She was a crusader for getting the vote for women, and interestingly, Bella and Robert agreed to delete the obey part of the marriage vow in their ceremony. In the bottom picture, you can see Belle crusading for women's suffrage at a local county fair. In running for Congress, LaFollette bucked the system and ran without the support of the political bosses of Wisconsin, Senator Sawyer in particular. His strategy to beat the political bosses was to keep people thoroughly informed. He said the quote, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." In a political revolution of sorts, LaFollette was defeated after 3 terms in Congress. The elections of 1890 saw Republicans wiped out both nationally and in Wisconsin by Democrats. In Wisconsin, the rejection was primarily because of the Bennett Law, which would have required all children to be educated in English. There were many German-speaking voters in Wisconsin that were against this law. Nationally, Republicans supported the McKinley tariffs that had caused prices to rise across the country. This is a policy that's again in our news in our modern day. As part of this political wave, Democrats in Wisconsin brought cases once they were in power against the Republican state treasurers who they had claimed had skimmed money for themselves. After returning to private practice, LaFollette said that Wisconsin Senator Sawyer had offered him a bribe to try to influence LaFollette's brother-in-law, who was a state Supreme Court justice in the state treasurer's case. It was this incident that LaFollette said turned him solidly against the political machines. In 1900, LaFollette returned to politics and was elected the governor of Wisconsin. He served 3 terms of 2 years each and implemented a system of using university experts to help develop legislation. He also spearheaded reforms in having people vote for candidates as opposed to them being chosen by the party bosses. He also worked for increased taxation of railroads who had previously been sheltered. In 1905, he was nominated to be a U.S. Senator by the legislature. As a U.S. Senator, LaFollette worked on reforms for worker protection such as an 8-hour day, as well as anti-corruption by prosecuting those involved in the Teapot Dome scandals. He was very much against the U.S. participation in World War I, a decision that may have hurt his chance to be elected president in 1924. Here we have a cartoon published in Harper's Weekly showing LaFollette battling the machine with Uncle Sam cheering him on. Now we'll shift gears and talk more generally about progressive causes and those who champion them. Child labor and safety of employees was a great concern at this time. Wages were low and jobs were often dangerous. About 20% of all employees lived below the poverty level. The Gilded Age saw the population of the United States balloon due to immigration. In addition, people were moving from rural areas to the cities during the Industrial Revolution. The result was people living in crowded apartments with poor sanitation, resulting in disease. In the late 19th century, many industries had little or no competition, allowing them to price fix. Carnegie Steel, Standard Oil, and the railroads, run by the Vanderbilts and the Goulds, bought up their suppliers and their competition. These owners became known as robber barons, as they could demand high prices for their products and services. In addition, there were many corruption scandals going on at this time period. There was the credit mobilers scam and the whiskey ring scandal. Both happened during the Grant administration. There was a lot of corruption in public office, as basically these employees were paid by commission, so there was a lot of opportunity for scamming the public at that time. Key players in the progressive movement include Nobel Prize winner Jane Addams, who fought for better living conditions for workers. Susan B. Anthony worked for civil rights and the women's right to vote. Theodore Roosevelt, who is famous for attacking monopolies and breaking up trusts, was also a benefactor of nature. And then lastly, Upton Sinclair, whose book The Jungle exposed horrifying working conditions of food processing employees, along with stories about rotten meat and other products. Okay, so now back to Robert LaFollette. What were his positions on these issues? In regards to representative government, he sought to eliminate party boss influence and let voters decide for their candidates via a primary system. LaFollette was not afraid to challenge the railroad monopolies. He saw that farmers were being overcharged in the cost to ship their products by rail, so he pushed for a commission to be nominated to help negotiate the freight costs. Bob LaFollette was opposed to big business sponsoring political candidates with contributions. He felt that candidates should not accept lavish gifts and contributions from businesses. He felt so strongly that he stated punishment for violations should include prison terms. On a similar note, he saw that some in government had become an arm of the corporations as they spent freely on political contributions to get favored treatment. This is a cartoon that was published shortly after he was made a U.S. Senator. It shows him ready to go to battle against the trusts and monopolies, including a nice little poem that's added in the center there. LaFollette never underestimated his enemies. He knew they had lots of funds that they could use to place advertisements in newspapers as propaganda against legislation. What really got under his skin was that the funds the monopolies used in these advertisements really belonged to their customers. The 8-hour workday was a fight like this. As a U.S. Senator, LaFollette addressed the president with emotional pleas to help prevent child labor, as you can see in the speech that he made to the Senate in 1917. In what I see as a rather profound statement, LaFollette suggested that throughout history there has been one constant issue: labor and those who choose to control it through slavery in one form or another. In other words, without anyone fighting for them, workers were forced to accept whatever terms their employers offered. LaFollette was strongly anti-war in general, and definitely against the U.S. participating in the European War of World War I. He felt there was fault with all European countries. Here we have a cartoon that was published in Life magazine, and it shows LaFollette getting awarded medals from a German commander. In my view, this is a very devastating depiction of LaFollette. In this excerpt from the Republican platform of 1910, you can see all of the progressive laws that LaFollette helped get passed in his time as a politician. Quite a remarkable list of activities. This is probably my favorite LaFollette cartoon. It shows basically Wisconsin before and after his reforms. In the before side, you see an octopus that is representing the railroads, and it's putting the squeeze on the customers. And then in the after slide part of it, it shows the model state with good laws that Wisconsin had after the reforms were put in place. Robert LaFollette ran for president as a progressive in 1924. He felt there wasn't much difference between Democrats and Republicans, so he ran under the progressive banner. While he won Wisconsin and collected almost 5 million votes, he lost to Calvin Coolidge, a Republican, in a landslide. His positions against intervention in World War I almost certainly hurt him in this election, as he was labeled a traitor and a Marxist. This cartoon shows Senator LaFollette represented as the old woman who lived in a shoe. He's holding a bunch of switches, and all around him are a bunch of crying children with different labels such as socialist, communist, expo moose, sorehead, farmer, grouch. These were labels, correct or incorrect, that were given to LaFollette, perhaps by his political enemies. This last cartoon, published shortly after his death, shows the legacy of LaFollette's work. While the tree is no longer standing, the roots of his work are still alive. The sources for this presentation include a book titled LaFollette and His Legacy, a good secondary source written by Alice Honeywell that was very useful in outlining his early life. Also, LaFollette, his own autobiography, was also very useful as a primary source. Other primary sources include a paper written by Robert LaFollette titled The Danger Threatening Representation Government, published in 1897, and also a book titled The Political Philosophy of Robert M. LaFollette as Revealed in His Speeches and Writings, edited by Ellen Terrell. This particular book is basically a collection of primary sources, as it has a lengthy list of speeches, writings, so on and so forth from the time. So it's an excellent source for primary information. Here we have a few more sources. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope you liked it. Thank you very much for listening.